my next step after that was how much is my prompting, how does that influence the outcome? I think it was, obvious because it's just from text to image. So I started to experiment a bit into what if I explicitly say, make it accessible, or do make sure that you have the contrast, like 3.5 or 5.5 or so on. In certain cases, it did improve it, but in other cases, it did not understand what accessibility is. So I had screens like, oh, navigate the accessibility word, or I don't know, just they thought it's just meaning of accessibility was just make it more available, which is it is the meaning of accessibility, but just the other one. So in terms of prompting, I don't have like really obvious conclusions now, at least in the design tools. But on the LLM side, it's a bit more different.
On today's show, we have a special guest. She is a principal product designer and PhD researcher exploring the intersection of generative AI, design, and accessibility. A former startup founder and educator with over a decade of experience specializing in AI-driven experiences. She creates intuitive solutions where strategy meets human-centered design. Recognized among Europe's top digital talents, Alexandra brings a unique perspective that blends academic rigor with practical implementation. Her focus, her focus is on developing ethical accessibility AI interfaces that enhance human capabilities. Alexandra, welcome to the show.
Hello, and thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Matthew. Glad to be here.
Awesome. So you want to start, Matheus?
Yes. So thank you for coming to our podcast. I want to ask you, like, you have such a rich and multidisciplinary background. Could you tell us a little bit about your journey? How did you ended up like in the intersection of generative AI, product design, and accessibility?
Yes, I was just hearing now my intro and I was thinking, wow, that's like a lot. And this question comes just right in. I started actually simpler with industrial design. I was really passionate about building physical products. But to be honest, since I was always working as a kid with computers, I switched quite rapidly. So sometimes in my first year of my bachelor's, I was in Amsterdam back then. I was doing my bachelor's in product design, but physical product design. I got the chance to work at UN Studio. They are an architecture company as a computational designer. So as much as I really liked doing physical things, I got engaged with working with them, and I started also being introduced at the same time with AI, and also got my hands on working on digital products. And after that, I just got fully in. And after a few years, I also became more entrepreneurial. I wanted to work with my own products, with my own ideas, because I was always helping others. And I got some EU funds to open my startup back in Romania. So I moved. I organized a lot of events also around that, tried to make others think the same, and also cultivate this entrepreneurial mindset in the community. And back then, I also wanted to introduce more topics that were not very popular. So that was 2019, if I'm not mistaken. And that was also the time when we had the first speaker in our events that discussed about AI design. So a long time ago, in a small community, there was someone, Nadia, who is also the founder of AI design community, to discuss about this topic. And I think it was also a good coincidence. I was a product designer back then working for an AI startup, and the hype just got crazy. And since then, I think I just didn't stop. I just worked with a lot of people who had great ideas. And I think now more and more people want to introduce AI within their products. So I would say this is a mix. And the last part where now I'm also involved in research is more like a passion that I had during my master's. I tried to also write research papers, and I also helped out while I was working with other startups. But I was never like the fully solely researcher on the project. now I have more control because I started my PhD, and I'm taking this further, one step further. Yeah, I would say, long story short, this is it.
Nice, nice. And I saw the photo that you have in your website when you were a kid, like in the computer. It's an amazing photo.
It's yeah, I would say thanks to my mom. I'm really happy she actually captured this moment. I was, I think, 3 years old, and that was my first computer that I think eh, I deleted my own Windows a few times. I don't know. I cracked it. I removed cables. It was just a disaster. But you know, she just continued to support me, and that's truly something that I'm really grateful.
So you started like working with AI before the hype, right? So was it like machine learning? Was like, were you developing any algorithm? Can you just briefly touch upon what exactly you were doing before?
Yes. Very different, right? So, as I said, I was working with physical products. So, I would say everyone was interested into developing things that were more smart, so more intelligent. They were not sure on what was the right technology to do that, but we had a department where we researched the future. So we looked into how does the future of transportation look like, future of life, future of work, and so on. But then also the future of certain products, since it was architectural company, of course, their main focus was future of architecture. I was not directly involved into that, but I got a lot of inspiration from what they worked and what technologies they used. So they used computational design. They also created some algorithms on basically generating more smarter interfaces, smarter as in, let's say, to be sure that you have less material to fit more weight, or to be more efficient for certain weather conditions. So to sum it up, just to make it more smart, I don't think people were very like involved in machine learning, but that was definitely the first technology that I also started with and also trying to experiment with just for my own self. Um, and then I think everyone from their own field started to experiment with chat-based interfaces. So it was, not everyone has the literacy, but everyone tried at least to experiment it a little bit. So for my own, I was coding, which is, you know, not that fun, I think, now looking at how many technologies you have there. But since it was before the hype, I was just using what was available.
That I'm an architect, and I'm really impressed with the Unstudious work. So, so
Oh, really?
yeah,
Really happy to hear. To be honest, they are like a super bunch of smart people there, and really curious. You know, they are very curious on the word, and they just keep doing new and new things.
yeah, no, that's amazing. And did you implement any, as I said, like you were like, not coding, but you were using some prompts and some stuff like in the
Correct.
architecture? Did you use like Rhino or any
Yes,
software,
Rhino and
Grasshopper?
Grasshopper.
Yeah,
Exactly. That was the main combo that I used back then. And I
yeah,
think it's still used in the same way. They just evolved the tools, and since they were the first ones, at least in this domain in architecture, they are still good.
yeah, yeah. That's
To
yeah, I can go then.
to whoever it's not in the field, what does Rhino and Grasshopper do? What kind of apps or programs are those? Just to clarify, because we have a very wide audience,
Sure.
I
Yeah.
guess.
I guess even the UX designers might not know what that means, but Rhino is a 3D software modeling, so it's used for 3D software. It's a 3D modeling software, and you can use it for anything you want. And then Grasshopper is just a way for you to do visual programming and model the interfaces by using certain conditions. And also code if you want, you know, if you're good at it. It's
Awesome.
just augmenting the capabilities you can do with regular software, which is really cool now that I think of like how it works. We should have one for Figma.
So you worked across startups, academia, and large-scale product teams. Uh, how have those different environments shaped your approach to design AI-driven experiences?
So what I like to say, because now more recently, right, I was between the large companies, large corporations, and academia. And what I like to say that whenever I work in corporations or with corporations or with people that work like that, I'm a misfit. So I tried like my own ways because of the startup vibes that I worked in the past. So while working with startups and in startups, you need to be very rapid and also validate your ideas with users because you can fail so fast and then anyways you're gonna fail. So just by knowing this, it helps you validate certain features and speeding up the process. Usually what I saw and I noticed lately is that designers tend to take a lot of time in just circling back some ideas or maybe not having enough information about why they solve why they're doing certain tasks that they heard from their manager, for example. And I can clearly see people that have more like faster ways, that it's because of their background. So I do think this is definitely influencing the way I work, and I would keep this also in the future. And in terms of academia, I think it's connected back to the research. I really like to know that I have frameworks in order to solve certain things and also approach problems more systematically. It's a bit of a nice combo.
And I was applying for some PhDs, and then they some guy like he told me like being a PhD student or doing a PhD project is kind of having a startup in a certain way, because you have to create like your own processes and your own ideas and develop that for of course for the academia purpose, but you can apply for a company. Is it true, or how's it for you?
Now that you're saying that, well, you need to search up for financing, you need to network, you need to experiment, you need to build products. I guess it's a bit of work. Yeah, it's not the same, definitely. It's more like you are sometimes by yourself, especially if your topic does not involve any like project groups or something like that. But I would see it exactly as a startup, especially when you are doing project groups. It's very popular when you have like big financing to collaborate with a lot of universities, and usually in cases like that, one is an engineer, one is a designer, one is a project manager, and then everyone is probably doing their best, honestly. And because of the conferences deadlines, you really need to move fast. So yeah, I think it's a good approach on seeing it like that.
Should we talk a little bit about accessibility? I'm really curious. And so, one of your focus areas is, of course, accessibility in AI interfaces, right? So,
Right.
where do you think is the most what do you think most current AI products fall short when it comes to inclusivity and accessibility?
What I've seen as main like standard approach in what people think, and it might be also because of the startup vibes, let's say, or the startup approach, is that everyone designs, especially in the beginnings, for a standard user. It's not only for AI products, but it's in general for products that are in its beginnings. So the standard user that they know everything. They are a little bit techy. They are in perfect control. They speak very good English, especially for conversational AI. So they have no issues whatsoever in using their products. The problems are usually just in the way we thought about how to use them. So I don't think this is right. Usually, we do have also other impairments that are not taken in consideration. So you don't have to be visual impairments in order to have visual impairments in order to not be able to use very well a product. But something that it's missed often is the fact that you can have cognitive diversity. You can have maybe dyslexia. You cannot speak English very well. You can be a little bit old and not be very friendly with the interfaces that you are using. So some people might think of accessibility just in that visual impairments usually or motor impairments, but in reality the spectrum is much more diverse and it might benefit more people than just the ones that are specifically targeted. So not everyone can process information the same way or easily navigate complex interfaces, and you don't need to have a disability, and that's usually quite missed from what we have today.
And at the same time, right? I think there is a lot of like, current solutions, there are a lot of problems with accessibility, but at the same time there is a discussion of how AI can actually enhance that, right? And especially because a lot of AI tools allow for let's say introducing new languages, so you can basically dub things, or so there are other aspects that you can basically leverage AI. How do you see that? Where do you see AI also uh, allowing for increased accessibility, but as an AI tool, or as a functionality of an AI tool? What are your thoughts in regards to that?
I think one big topic nowadays that you've probably seen because it's pretty popular is that conversational AI became quite big, but that's connected pretty much with having seamless experiences, multimodal interfaces, basically. So offering the same functionality through either voice, text, or just visual interfaces. While in the past, mostly everything was visual, now we are definitely expanding and just getting out of this. So AI is really helping into that. Just like basic technologies like speech to text, text to speech are now, I think, integrated everywhere. And for sure, if you look at the usage, that's helping a lot. So I think you don't need big capabilities, transformative, in order to just enhance someone else's life or just daily tasks. Just make sure that you think of the real problems. So this is just what I think should happen a little bit more with how we integrate AI.
In your research, are you focusing on a specific group of individuals, or are you researching for different approaches in different like accessibility tools?
So my PhD is going to be 4 years long. So far, I'm in my first year. So usually the way we start is also quite broad, and then we start narrow it. What I did in the beginning was actually that, just to see what is the current state of research nowadays, and what is everyone looking into. And everyone is looking into visual impairments. That's also very obvious because it's a big number of people with disabilities out of the whole big group. And the ones that I just mentioned with the cognitive disabilities are a bit more overlooked. So they don't really look into that. There are very few research into it, and especially in regards of accessibility. So my first year is more focused on the compliance of the AI tools. So this is actually more connected to visual impairments because we look at visuals. So I'm evaluating the compliance of visuals. I'm there indirectly. I'm also like targeting the same group as the other researchers, and so it just might be easier to do that. But my plan is to move slowly to the groups that are not that much researched. So I'm trying to actually not focus on a specific group, but more to be sure that I'm covering as much as possible.
I think when we started talking about accessibility, maybe we didn't also conceptualize it, or at least explain what accessibility is, which is fine, but we do it now. Can you
Let's do it.
define
Yeah.
what is the concept of accessibility? And when you talk about different types of accessibility, can you just at least define it a little bit?
What I like to define accessibility is just making experiences available for as many people as possible. And I like to say that instead of saying, oh, accessibility is, making it more inclusive for people with disabilities. And the reason why is that, and there is an image that I will show you later, is because everyone can have disabilities. So disabilities can be permanent. Of course, those are visible. Some of them are even physical. So that's very, very obvious for everyone. But then some of them can be temporary. So one of my biggest motivations, also what I had getting into this PhD, is that I realized I have many temporary disabilities now since I'm also a mom. And the very obvious ones were that I started using everything with one hand because I had the baby in the other one. So it was very difficult for me actually to, write messages even, or I started to use more the voice messages because it was just easier for me not to write, and it's also, more safe. And what a lot of people don't realize is that we are in every day, I can like count on it that everyone will go through an event or just an interaction where they will have a temporary disability and they're just not aware of. They will be just frustrated. Oh, I cannot see what's written here because there's so much sun on my screen, and then everything is just unclear. And that might be because you don't have enough contrast on your font. So I think it's also a matter of raising awareness on this, and just to understand that it's not, you don't need to have like a physical disability to be targeted within those sort of interactions. Hopefully I could explain it so everyone understands
Yeah,
it now.
it makes sense. There's like temporary disabilities, and then they're all permanent, right? So yeah, I think you explained it well. Thanks for the context. And
Great you
so
asked.
yeah, I think it's just good to conceptualize it, right? So if people are not that familiar with that, it's good to know. But yeah, this whole accessibility is really, it's really interesting. And yeah, I think I mentioned to you that I did this master class of accessibility when I was in South by Southwest, and it was really cool to get through some of the conceptualization of accessibility. So it was quite nice.
It's
Yeah,
to be honest, I think a lot of people when they get in touch with what accessibility means or just accessibility projects, they might be targeted. Like first time I had to solve a bug, I had to learn a bit about contrast. But if you are passionate, of course, and if you care about having interfaces or products used by everyone, so being inclusive in general, then you actually get to the root of it and understand that it's not just for specific things, but it's more general. And of course, someone can specialize on something specific, but what I like to do is to think more of a general audience.
yeah. It's I worked at the airport here in Brazil like a long time ago, and then my focus was on accessibility for architecture. So thinking about like this special seat, and this all these ramps to people with disabilities, so they can go with the wheelchairs and even like handrails, this kind of stuff.
Or
So
moms with a strolley, because now I'm
yeah,
also within that group.
yeah, and I never thought about the partially, as you said, like temporary disabilities. It makes so much sense. For example, if you broke an arm, or if you are a mom, as you mentioned. So it's really
Exactly.
interesting.
It's just another way of seeing things, I guess. And until you are not part of that group, because you could probably just be excluded your whole life, right? You couldn't just be
Yeah,
always in the perfect lighting, your arms, you would never break an arm, you would never have a baby to carry. Like you
yeah,
could be in that position. But I bet that at least once in your lifetime you would go through this and then you will realize, oh, that doesn't work anymore. What am I gonna do? And then you're gonna see everything is unfair. Anything is unfair to you. Oh, this doesn't work. That's not good. Roads are not okay here. I also like when I applied for my PhD, I had a presentation for my motivation, and then I remember I told them that I see the city differently. So now when I wanted to go, for example, from my home to the university, I had my regular path. But if I want to go with my kid to the university, I just need to take a completely different route because I need to make sure that everywhere I go, it's wheelchair accessible so I can have pathways. Otherwise, it's going to be a nightmare.
yeah.
So it's just different.
That's a good perspective. And are you focusing in on a specific product that you're developing, like for example, for a specific reason, or is it more general tool for many different other tools?
Since I'm a designer, I
Yeah,
try to focus now on design tools. I kind of expanded, to be honest, also on developer tools. So I'm looking into, but I will try to keep my focus mostly for designers or this cycle product design. And this is where I will be focusing with my PhD.
nice.
What kind of tools are you looking to explore? What kind of design tools, for example?
Within my research, I looked now already at five design tools. One of them is Figma because everyone is using it. So I'm looking into any tool, not any, but mostly tools that are generating interfaces with AI, either prompt, voice, anything. And since it's really connected with LLMs, I now started to investigate also chat-based LLMs like the obviously ChatGPT, Claude, DeepSeek, and they still generate interfaces, but in a little bit of a different way because they also generate the code with it. And that just gives me a bit more insights into how accessible they are, but from different requirements. So not visual this time. That's how I'm targeting other people.
And can you elaborate a little bit? Let's just use Figma for example. What are you identifying or mapping in these tools if they have accessibility functionality, or if they allow for that to happen inside that application? Or can you elaborate a little bit what is actually your focus and what you're actually evaluating in these tools? We can use Figma as an example because I think it's a widespread one.
Yes, but the same methodology I've used in other products as well. So what I tried was a bit explorative at the beginnings. First, I just wanted to see the real life application, right? So now Figma AI has this use cases where you can just have a draft. So a draft for any idea that you have. Let's say I want to create a social media app. And I just wanted to see the compliance. So if I'm generating 100 interfaces for 5 types of apps, how does the compliance, like, are they accessible or not? And then I try to look at certain criteria because since they are just static, you cannot evaluate them like for like code. So in general, they were, to be honest, a bit repetitive. So I had other findings, like they are not very creative and, but they are not really connected to accessibility. So this was my first paper that I published. It was actually based on the compliance on those tools. They do lack certain basic features, like the contrast. Sometimes it was not okay. Not sure if anyone from Figma has seen my experiments. I don't think so, but now they start to become a bit better. So I think their models are also becoming smarter. They have been like 5 months since I've done those experiments by now, and I do see a lot of improvements every time. And my next step after that was how much is my prompting, the prompting, how does that influence the outcome? I think it was, obvious because it's just from text to image. So I started to experiment a bit into what if I explicitly say, make it accessible, or do make sure that you have the contrast, like 3.5 or 5.5 or so on. And in certain cases, it did improve it, but in other cases, it did not understand what accessibility is. So I had screens like, navigate the accessibility word, or I don't know, just they thought it's just the meaning of accessibility was just make it more available, which is, it is the meaning of accessibility, but just the other one. So in terms of prompting, I don't have like really obvious conclusions now, at least in the design tools. But on the LLM side, it's a bit more different. And I think it's also because they are used on being more prompted, and the outcome does depend a lot on the words that you use there. And in there, you could see potentially some improvements if you are explicitly asking for it. So those two things are the, let's say, the newest updates from my research papers.
For the LLMs, right? What kind of accessibility you're looking to test for compliance there? If it's if it's a conversational base, what exactly is bias, or can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yes. So what I tried to do was first to look at what would be the most urgent in the next month. So I think I maybe mentioned before, but now the EU Act, it's gonna be taking place in the next month. So initially I was thinking, okay, let's try to make this meaningful and then have a look at what are the criteria for the EU Act and make sure to see if we ever decide to go this path, the interfaces that we generate are accessible and at least compliant within the EU world. So they have certain criteria list. Pretty much is VCAG 2.1, so it's not like very specific, but they do have some specific criteria for other apps, and it's a bit more complex in terms of evaluating either code or image because you have a list. So you have a list that you need to go through. It's quite big. And if you do it manually, that's probably going to take forever, especially if you evaluate hundreds of apps. So I try to mix it with automated testing, which already goes through certain things, like if it works with keyboard, if the contrast is okay, if it has alt text, so on. And that was generated automatically, like in a report format. And then I also conducted manual testing. So it's difficult also to, because you cannot really say, oh, this is not fully compliant, but I can say it's not fully compliant based on these like certain criteria that I looked into. But I try to be as diverse as possible. So looking to contrast, so visual impairments, then going for motor abilities, and then just continue from there.
It's really interesting. And you mentioned like the UAI Act. Is it directly impacting your research, and how is the difference? For example, if you do this research in the US and then in the Europe, I don't know if you can elaborate a little bit about that, the differences and how it's impacting your research and your work.
So I'm not funded by them or anything like that, but since I live in Europe, for me it's important to make sure that most of my designs are, aware and they take in consideration what's happening in the context. And now the way it's influencing, it's for me probably not going to be that much because I always took that in consideration. But I do think that it's going to influence the other massive designers that we have around, because accessibility was quite of a niche subject, I would say. Sometimes thought was more like an afterthought. Oh, we have this product, but we do have this accessibility checklist. Now, make sure that we have that checked, right? Because otherwise we might get a fine. So I don't think that is going to work anymore because, of course, the fines were going to be very big. But I hopefully people will not design with inclusivity in mind because of the fines, but because of the principles. So the way I see it is that EU is taking maybe more of a precautionary stake in like how they approach AI and accessibility. Now they actually have those two acts at the same time, the AI Act and the Accessibility Act. Maybe it's a coincidence or just maybe they think they're both important. And how I think that's a bit different than what happens in the States, although that's, you know, I would say, sensitive subject, especially this month. It's that we try to take care that we take care of the harm before it actually happens. Because in general, this is also why we design uh, for accessibility. You know, we try to make it work for most of the people before someone actually experiences and has a bad experience, and maybe they just keep the product from there on. So in European institutions, they just try to set some standards, especially during this year.
And there's two different regulatory frameworks, I guess, in regards to coming from the EU, right? There's one that is mostly like, at least as far as I know, please correct me if I'm wrong, but there's one that is mostly focused on accessibility. As far as I recall, 2025 is actually going to take place in digital
Correct.
products, and then there's the EU AI Act, which taps a little bit, I guess, on top of that as well. Can you just elaborate a bit on what is the difference between those two? Where do they converge, and how does that work? Do you need they are interconnected? Can you know figure something out on one side of the AIEO Act and get away with the accessibility one? Well, how does that work?
To be honest, I wish that there was someone that thought about them at the same time, but it's not. So they are, I think someone decided to do the AI because of the pressing news and everything that happened with the rapid changes. So they are just more legal settings into how to protect people from AI products and AI technologies in general, you know, just not to put out in the world something that would harm people. And the EU Act on Accessibility is something a bit more old, I think from 2017, and I really hope I'm not mistaken. But no one really took it in consideration. And it was also not very pressing. And, you know, we can all understand why, because we have other pressing needs. And the AI Act came in very fast compared to the other one. And the way they work at the same time is it needs to be probably investigated within companies, because I don't think that everyone anticipated that. But the way I see it is, they can also be taught separately, right? So that's not an issue. But for someone that does both, especially AI products that have, maybe they are especially for people who have certain disabilities, they need to look at the use cases. The EU Act also is now targeting more audiovisual products, so maybe things like WhatsApp or Meet, or even this product that we are registering the podcast on,
Yeah.
and making sure that everyone can use them. And the other one is more about the harm of the advancements of the technologies. So they can definitely work at the same time, but they just happen at the same time. So this is the coincidence that we are in right now.
And I think it's important, like we discuss this a little bit in the to be honest, a lot in the podcast, because we have this vision that we should regulate a little bit, because everyone is kind of afraid of having something so huge that they can just as I don't know, maybe a robot and AI can just say, like, the problem is the humans, so let's eliminate all the humans and stuff like that. So
Yes, of course, we should be aware that this, I mean, someone needs to control it, right? And it should be us.
yeah,
True.
definitely, that's the thing. And so it's important, but as is mentioned, if you regulate, create different regulations at the same time, they can kind of clash and create a problem. Like, so I saw a guy from Denmark. He was saying that, in some startups, they're moving to US because there's less regulation, so they can develop
Hmm.
products like without having some boundaries to follow. And then he was questioning if they shouldn't be a little bit less, having less regulation in Europe to increase the startups, to make more startups rise in the EU. So that's
This is a, I think you are pointing to a very important part of the differences between what's happening in Europe versus the other parts of the world, and especially US and Asia. So everyone knows that, we are trying to be very agile and very fast, but the startups are mostly in Silicon Valley, right? So it's not a coincidence that they are mostly there, and this is because of also the legislation that it's surrounding them and making it a bit more easily to maybe launch ideas that um, not necessarily hurt people, but they are maybe not detailed or described or assessed on the AI Act, let's say, because the AI Act is somehow trying to make them, give them a score of risk, and then try to look at some details of how could potentially those be harmful for the users. So in a way, it's also good, but also bad. So they all both have both approaches have also advantages and disadvantages. One is definitely more enforcing some innovation at fast pace, which is really great because it's going to be condensed with people with great ideas all at the same place, all at the same time. And we all know that that's how innovation happen. But on the other side, it might be put out there in the world, and then some people might be harmed because of it. And we've seen a lot of examples even for the basic TikTok, right? It's not AI, but I mean it has some, but it's not, because that's not the reason why it was harmful. But some people just put it out, and then some other countries just decide, oh, now we need to cut it off because I'm not okay with your features or with what happens. And I'm not gonna even go into that, but even if we look at Romania, we just had elections canceled because of TikTok. So it can be potentially super big.
I
So
want
maybe it's not bad to have some assessments because before you launch a product.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're on the same page here. I think we've been talking about regulation a lot in the podcast, and then you cannot just forget about that. That is really important, and I think one of the parallels that we'll always do is in regards to the aviation industry, right?
Hmm.
That's a highly regulated field, and then that's why we don't have accidents. Because I mean, I can't say that because there has been a lot of accidents recently, but but mostly is like really safe because of the high regulations. Like nobody escapes that. So the difference, I guess, and what it's hard maybe for people to understand is that when you're regulating physical products, it's easy to see, right, the problems. But when digital products, there you have to know what you're actually regulating. You have to understand how these things work to go deeper on the regulations. I think that's the challenge. Yeah, maybe just having more people that understand these technologies to be able to be part of regulatory bodies, right?
Totally agree. I couldn't be more aligned with this. It's a very good analogy if you think of the aviation, and I agree. It's a new domain, right? As I said, I'm before the hype, and even after the hype, I think the pool of people that work in AI is now so big, but the experience it's not very vast, and even I don't know if I can even consider myself with more vast experience, but I couldn't be confident in any regulatory system. So it takes also experience in working with those technologies. Also, you need to have this vision of what could happen in the future, and that's a skill that not a lot of people have it. And understanding the capabilities, understanding where to go, but also you need to have confidence in what you put out there.
Yes. I want to just pivot a little bit to talk a little bit about design in AI products.
Let's talk about the good side now. That was the bad or the ugly. We'll see.
Exactly.
We take it the other way around.
So you talk about bridging product strategy with UX and UI, right? So where do you see are the biggest gaps in how companies approach AI product development today? Taps a little bit on what we were talking about, but
I have so much to say about this. So most of my past clients and all the friends that I have that have ideas, and everyone that I know in the like my close circle, and even the expanded one, I see that they just want products and then they think of AI as just a technical add-on. We just want to make this AI powered whatever, and then you name it whatever you want after that. And I also got this question in regards of like how could AI designers be prepared in being AI designers? And I'm like, answer is very simple. You just need to be a designer. You don't need to be an AI designer. A designer does the same thing all over again, no matter if it's an AI product or if it's just a regular one, if it's a physical one or if it's a digital one. You just need to solve user problems. Of course, if you're doing user-centered design, which I hope that a lot of people do, and what I think now product leaders forgot is that they have users for their products. Usually, people are driven by their passions. So I could see why everyone wants to build something because they got a great idea and money, because you need both. And they just forget that they need to start from user problems and not AI capabilities. So they don't really understand the actual human needs, and this is usually why startup fail, and just big products could fail also, and designers could be very confused on what they need to do, and that's why they think they need a course on AI design probably, which is good because someone needs to remind them that in the course.
That's an interesting point of view. Daniel, for example, he's a really good designer, and he's using the tools to make his work better. Not as I said, like just I want to be an AI artist, so you just go for this. To actually, you need to be a good artist to become a good AI artist. Let's say so. Uh, so it's really interesting your point of view.
But it's also a different experience, right? So everyone it's using AI, especially as a designer, to augment their process, and that's really great. But some people might also use these words interconnectingly. So you could be an AI designer because you create things with AI, but you could also be an AI designer because you create things for AI.
Yeah.
So we are just getting there, and no one really knows which type of design AI designer are you. But I was referring
most
to
like
the second one.
Yeah.
most likely both, right? You're going to
Most
be
likely
using
both. Very true.
AI tools to design AI tools.
AI.
Yeah.
This is true. Yeah, this is correct. This
Yeah.
is really correct and really accurate, especially if you look at the number of apps that got out that they use AI.
Yeah. And do you have any advice would you give, for example, to product leaders who want to integrate like Gen AI in into their products, like without losing sight or usability and inclusion?
I think maybe yes. If we look back at two things, one is making sure that your resources are used efficiently. And I'm talking now about teams, money, and everything. Yeah, a lot of leaders they try to, and they are very fast into putting out things out, and that takes usually a lot of money and resources and time of engineers building things. So what I really like to say is invest in time, invest and spend some time in like putting your team side by side, working together from the earlier stages and also sharing this like understanding of what the capabilities of your technologies are and also what are the needs of your users, potential users. And I think just taking a step back and just not jumping in right in into developing the products would benefit tremendously to the product that we're going to build out. So that's definitely number one in all products everywhere, not just AI, but especially AI because of the like excitement that people have in terms of technology. And the second one is define success metrics. I haven't seen that. I just haven't seen it. I know that everyone wants it out, and then sometimes when something is out or the design is done or the experience is done, they're like, I don't like it. I think that product just does it better because I've seen it, I tried it out. Or especially in this AI driven world, now they launch products every week and then you can just change your mind. But and that's because you have preferences and that's perfectly fine. But as soon as you can have some success metrics to guide yourself, your experience towards that is going to be easier not to change your product every week because of some other competitor. I don't think it's like a lot, but honest. At least it's honest.
They're good advices. And can you? I was just like thinking, how would you evaluate? For example, you mentioned that you have a tool to evaluate if an app or any product are accessible. Just like thinking, what do you recommend for like companies to that want to include accessibility in their products? What would you be your advice? Like how can you proceed? Like do you need a team for that or yeah?
It's a very good question, and I think a lot of companies will ask themselves that, especially after July, because I don't know, maybe not a lot, but at least some in EU. And I'm not going to say that the answer is easy because it's not. I worked in multiple sort of like teams where we had even a dedicated accessibility team where we evaluated. As I said, it's a bit difficult to evaluate certain experiences. You don't have one tool to solve everything and then also to solve the accessibility issues. But what I can advise, and I think that's really good, is to invest a bit in also what Daniel did to have this maybe a workshop, maybe a course into getting introduced, understanding what it means, and that comes from the bottom. So if you have an idea that you're gonna launch, you know that you need to think a little bit about it from the beginning. So even from the requirements, from the product managers, then designers need to understand that they need to design certain features in a way that are inclusive. And towards the end, even engineers need to make sure that they implement certain like tags or make sure that the way the headings are ordered in their app makes sense and it's inclusive. So unfortunately, it's not just one checklist as most of the people think about it, but it's more introduced within the cycle of product development, which makes it a bit more difficult. But you need to exercise it. It's like biking. As soon as you start, maybe it's a bit more difficult in the beginning, but then you're not gonna forget it. It's not like something that you forget it, and it doesn't evolve like dramatically. That 1 year is like that, and the next year is like this. Absolutely not. And this is my only advice: just start somewhere, and then it's just gonna become easier and easier.
And just to complement, let's say that would you say that the Gen AI tools and all these AIs can help in this process? Like, how do you see this process with
This is
technology?
another part of my research. I actually
Yeah.
was not sure. Can we make use of it? Hopefully, yes. This is actually all part of my ongoing research right now, so I would give you a partly answer. What I tried to do was so we designed interfaces with LLMs, and then we tried to use them also to evaluate and then to improve. So yes, in a way, yes, it does help. They know how to evaluate, although you ask them to be fully compliant, they're not going to do that. But then if you ask them like, hey, what did you do wrong? They can evaluate themselves. So that's definitely a good step. And then you can ask them to remediate some problems. So LLMs are very good at fixing issues. As soon as you have them listed somewhere, it's going to be easy for you to use it. So there are also coding agents that can help you with that. So really great. Design tools, not yet. And what I think we're gonna do in the future, or what I'm gonna be looking at least in the future, is to have this sort of assistant that can help you understand and then make sure that whatever you design from the beginning, some sort of like a Figma plugin, or I don't know exactly what it's gonna be, to make sure it's gonna be there for you to get started on the good path from the beginning, if you want to. So not to be there, just work quietly in the background if you need it.
So just to think a little bit about the future of human AI interaction, right? By you looking ahead, how do you imagine the human computer interaction will evolve when AI is embedded in a lot more tools, right? How do you see that happening, and what are the implications of that?
I'm gonna give you an optimistic answer. Yeah, let's start from here. So I'm gonna tell you what I hope is gonna happen, and I'm sure it will in some product, and it's starting also. So it's the near future. I do really hope that AI is gonna be contextual. So I'm really looking forward for those interfaces that will adapt in real time. So we started to seeing a little bit in automotive, which is really awesome. In gaming, again, it's really awesome. But I'm really looking forward to see it in everyday products, which to be honest, I haven't so much. I'm looking more into personalization and things that, as I've mentioned, they don't require specific configurations at the moment. They just adapt as you go. So I really hope this is my optimistic take on the future of human AI interaction.
You mentioned that the automotive industry, you already seen some of these. Can you give an example of what is like in the car interface, or how?
To be honest, now that you said, I'm not sure if they're public, but I can tell you what I saw. I have some friends. I have some friends of friends that they are researching actually. So probably it's not in real use, but they are in the R&D world nowadays, where they have those interfaces that they show up on the front port, I guess that's how it's called, where it adapts depending on like your speed, where you are. They show up. Like the buttons could change depending on, let's say you want to go more sports, so then the colors could change, the buttons could change. They show up certain things like if maybe because of the speed you need to take in consideration certain safety features, so then the interface adapts without you talking to it or actually requiring like, oh, I just want this to change when this happens. So it's more contextual depending on your situation.
It's basically what personalization always should have been, right? And
Yes,
we never got there.
yes, very correct. And I think people try to go there, but now it's just happening and it's smart. I mean, it's happening in a smart way. It's not deterministic.
By the way, if you want to cut that out, because if you're somebody that is researching and maybe there's like an NDA, we can cut that out. So just
I've
let
seen
us know.
public videos. I've seen public
Okay.
videos, but it's just not. I don't. There's some friends from Volvo. That's just off record. But I don't think it's in their product yet. That's the only thing.
Okay.
That I don't think so. But they do have a department of R&D where they publish that, and I've seen that at conferences. So it's not an issue.
I would love to see that. If you have
I'm
something that you
gonna
can
look
send it
into
to
it.
me, I would
Yeah,
love
yeah,
to see
yeah,
it,
yeah, yeah.
because I think I do think that that's the So that's where we're going, and I think we talk a lot about, um, at least I've seen a lot of futurist thought on how AI can actually personalize everything to the point that maybe you have a need for a specific thing that you want to do that is only lasts a weekend. So in the future of this, personalized on the fly interfaces, that you're going to have an app created by an AI assistant or something for that particular use case for that weekend, and then it's going to auto delete afterwards because it doesn't need to be there because it serves its purpose, which is quite crazy to think about that.
Interesting
But it's
perspective. Interesting perspective.
And I
I've seen
think
a
it
lot of people
goes,
talking.
yeah.
Sorry,
No,
go ahead.
I was just about to say that it's kind of matches the accessibility too, because if you create something personally, you can do whatever you wanted. So it's kind of a good point of view. I should say.
It's an add-on, yeah. It's definitely gonna help also with accessibility because I do have this in mind. So at least I hope in the future I will have like any, I don't know, any app that could tell me, uh, just to give you a brief example, that I wish it could have happened earlier, right? So I don't know if all the women are like that, but if anyone hears me out now in this podcast, I always like to like check the ingredients of the skincare or makeup or whatever I check. I had this trend whenever it was COVID time. I wanted to be like, oh, checking natural ingredients, whatever. So when I got pregnant, I found out that I actually, oh, oops, you cannot really use anything like all the things anymore, but you need to check it out. And I really wish like an app could knew that and just also like highlight some of the things. Oh, you cannot use that anymore. Hey, just take your routine, look into your routine. You need to do some changes. But then you have to do it all over again. And by the way, I still did not find an app for that. I wanted to build it myself back then, but now I'm not that power to do it anymore. But I'm looking into this type of personalization, like even thinking of contextual things that could happen to you.
Yeah,
Temporary
hopefully it's coming,
disabilities,
right?
Yeah, it's a good.
hopefully. So it's an optimistic future, as I said, quite
Yeah.
optimistic. Looking
Yeah,
forward for it.
exciting. It's exciting to think about what what this technology can enable us to do right in the near future. So it's quite exciting. I just want to mention that we're kind of getting close to the end. So I think we only have two more questions, and then we should wrap it up.
For sure.
Uh, yes. So your turn. Matheus.
Yes. So if you could redesign one mainstream AI tool with accessibility and ethics at the core, what would it be, and what would you change, like in this tool?
So not sure if the answer is gonna be great, but I was making this joke with my coordinator for my PhD on like, did you ever thought about how would a social media app, let's take TikTok, would look like if the interface would be horrible? Like, would you still use it as much? Like, how about you would have like 10 buttons in a row? Like, if you remember those images with the interfaces that looked super bad in 2000. So now going back to the good answer is I think I would look into social media because it's used so much nowadays and it's influencing all the like interactions that we have among us, like humans. I'm not talking about AI right now. And if you think of accessibility in mind, there are multiple people from those groups that I've mentioned in the beginnings. People with dyslexia, people with OCD, especially with people with OCD, that they get triggered so much about all those transitions. I would even think about children. Of course, now since I'm a mom, I started to read more and more, and there are so many obvious examples, bad examples, unfortunately, of how this technology harms their development. So I would definitely look into that and to see how the social media for kids look like. And I wouldn't necessarily maybe even redesign it, but maybe there is a way to adapt it if it's smart. If we think of the optimistic future, can we make use of AI for good and try to adapt certain apps that we use to take care of the people around us? Even the elderly, I know they have big buttons and big font sizes, but hey, come on, is this all? My mom needs to look at a video, not my mom, but maybe my grandma needs to look at a video 5 times to make sure she understood the message. Can we do better? I'm pretty sure we can do better. We are all designers, right? We are all people with great ideas. We have the capabilities. We just need to take it in consideration. And I understand maybe that's not going to bring a lot of money, but maybe the experience is going to be much better and more parents will leave their kids with social media then. So somehow maybe there's going to be money. But if you don't think of that first and you try to think of your users, even the ones that are not the most obvious in the beginning would be really obvious. So that's just one product that I would definitely change.
Awesome. So just to close it up, just think about, the new generation of designers, right? What skills or mindset should the next generation of designers be cultivating to design AI responsibly and inclusively?
I think they are on the right path, to be honest. I started to talk with a lot of young designers, and I see them more and more interested about the surroundings, the environment, the future, their own experience, and they are very vocal. And I'm really proud, to be honest. I see a lot of good examples around me. So I honestly don't really wish for them to change anything, but instead just to continue doing what they are actually doing right now, because our generation was not like that. And I really believe they should guard their design ethics. So make sure they don't work for someone that is making a product that is doing bad things. They don't work over hours. They don't put out designs that they don't like. So just make sure they are vocal, because the worst case, what can happen? They can just get a no. So it's really good for them to see them involved, and I'm really proud, to be honest, at the generation that it's the young generation of designers like that. So go. That's a good one.
Awesome.
Nice. That was a good advice.
Thanks. I think, yeah, thank you so much for being in the show with us, and where people can find you online.
They can find me online on LinkedIn. Mostly, I try to post as much as possible whenever I have time. My articles are on my website, and if you Google my name with research, you're probably gonna find me now. And when I'm not writing about academia, I try to write on Medium. And if you want to see me snowboarding, it's gonna be Instagram, but that's a bit more private.
Awesome. We're gonna link all your links in the show notes. But yeah, it was awesome. It was great, great conversation. A lot of insights.
Likewise. Great host, guys.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for being here. It was really nice.
If you enjoyed the show, please consider leaving a review on Apple Podcasts. It's free and helps us a lot. This way, it can help us also reach new listeners. Oh, and if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform to stay up to date on our latest episodes. If you have any questions for us, reach out to us at hello@humanaiXP.com or connect with us on Instagram. Thanks for listening. See you next week.